Protocol is a crypto project that has been building something extremely interesting in what you could consider the privacy sector of the crypto or worldly markets. And they are described as a project that strives to address the shortcomings of Tor's current network. Yeah, that's how Yahoo Finance have described them. And I have contact with the team, and we decided to sit down for an AMA to talk more about the project and what they're building, because I think that basically with the Tor network, many of you may be familiar with it. It has come under a lot of scrutiny because it relies on volunteers to keep its networks operational. And from my research, ATOR is a project that looks to address this. So we're going to get into this a little bit more today. And I just want to introduce the ATOR team that I'm here with right now. I'm very happy to be talking to you and to learn more about your project. Welcome to the Tier 7 Network.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so we're just going to kick off this AMA with some very simple, straightforward questions. First and foremost, obviously I gave a slight intro, but if you could describe ATOR in a sentence, in one simple sentence that you could give to a child, what would that sentence be?
ATOR is recognition rewards for advocates of anonymity.
Okay. So could you expound on that a little bit more?
So advocates of anonymity come in different shapes and forms, I guess. You can either be an educator, someone who is an operator that runs a relay, which is where we're concentrating first, is in education and the relay operators. The infrastructure of the Onion routing network relies heavily on volunteers to run these relays, so
Right.
that users can use these relays to then become as anonymous as they can be. So these relays are vital to the network itself. So if there are not enough relays out there, the network slows down, and you're forced to use the same relays multiple times, which in essence is not recommended, because then you can be de-anonymized because you're using the same relays over and over again.
Okay. All right. So that's very, very clear, and I think we covered that before too. I just want to ask an offshoot question on the de-anonymization. How common is that problem in Tor's, we could just say market or user base today, the de-anonymization part of the user? Because of course, people download and use Tor to be anonymous, and if it's not working in the way it's intended, then it's a definitely a gap in the market. So, do you have a read on how um, big or little of a problem you're attacking here with the Tor network in terms of numbers?
The greater the number of relays, the lower the number of, I guess, the chance of de-anonymizing the traffic or the users. For the most part, it's usually the traffic that's trying to be, I guess, qualified or quantified, where the relays aren't necessarily looking at the user, but where the users are going to try to find the hidden services that no one really knows about. So to find hidden marketplaces or to find certain websites, they'll spin up a lot of relays. It's been done in the past, and then kind of monitor the traffic and where the traffic is going. So if it's heavily going to the same IP address, they know that there's probably a service on that IP address, and then that's where the attack will happen.
I
So
understand.
the greater the number of relays, the lower your chance of de-anonymization is.
Yeah, yeah. And is there often a sufficient amount of relays at any one time in the Tor network at the moment, or is it a significant problem? That's really the question I was getting at. How often would it be that? Of course, you gave a nuanced answer that yeah, it's just dependent on the amount of relays there are. But have you witnessed in the Tor network at the moment that the amount of relays drops quite a lot regularly, or do you see it being topped up quite easily?
Well, at the moment, there are over 2 million daily users and
Yeah.
only over 6,000 relays.
Okay.
So
Right.
yeah, that that doesn't seem sufficient. And if we want more users to use the network and to be able to use it properly, we need more relays for just the bandwidth and the experience. Because right
Right.
now it's just really slow. Anyone that you speak to can attest to how slow Tor is. So to increase the speed and usability, we do need more relays.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I've used Tor, and it's definitely a very slow, clunky kind of experience. And so then that leads me naturally on to the next question. So you mentioned that Atos strives to address these shortcomings. How exactly will it do it? So I understand that there is a hardware aspect, so that users are incentivized to run these routers and relays that we just talked about. Um, can you go into more about how that whole thing works from two aspects? The first aspect is what's in it for the person hosting the relay or the router, as you put it, and the second part is how is the token expected to work as part of that incentive mechanism?
So currently, the issue that we see is the technical gap to be able to run a relay is pretty big for the non-technical user. So if you've never used the Linux operating system before, you've
Mhm,
never
mhm.
used the terminal before, it might be difficult for you to set a relay up. You might also not want to use your laptop or your current device or pay for a VPS to be able to run one. So we want to give people the option of running a really low power device to be able to run a relay if they want to participate and help people stay anonymous, or at least help the network become a little more sustainable, to allow others that are being suppressed right now to at least use the network and know that they are advocates of this push forward. The second side of it, I believe you asked for the token, where the rewards are designed to pay out for the uptime. So depending on how long your relay is up and how much bandwidth you're providing and how healthy your relay is, and the health of the relay is usually based on the consensus. So if you look at the metrics website, you'll see relays up there, and each relay will have a consensus weight, and that consensus weight is usually given to it by the actual network. That's not given to it by ATOR. So what we're doing is we're using the metrics that are already out there to be able to reward the relays that want to participate in this protocol. And the rewards are not just for our hardware, it's for existing relays as well. So if you do have the technical know-how and you want to teach others or you want to run relays, you can register as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be our hardware to receive the rewards. We just want the infrastructure to become stronger.
I see. So that naturally leads me on to a curious question. You draw a distinction between the relays and the hardware. Am I correct in saying that the hardware is a simplified version that is a less barrier to entry? People can just buy the hardware and run the relay rather than doing it themselves on the computer.
Yes, this would be a standalone device that they can use, and they'll be able to flash new versions on as we upgrade. So they'll be able to download new versions onto, let's say, an SD card, plug it into the hardware device, start it up. The hardware device will copy on the new firmware or the new upgrade, and then you'll be able to plug your device back in and continue earning with the new upgrades as well.
Okay. And the hardware itself, how difficult or how simple is it to run? What's required to run the ATOR hardware? Yeah, to uphold these relays.
You would have to have an active internet connection and just some electricity per month. That's about it.
Okay, so it's really
You would
very, very
need
simple.
another, yes, you would need a separate device to be able to configure the ATOR relay, like let's say your phone or a PC or a laptop, just to be able to connect to your hardware and make
Hmm.
sure that it's connected to your browser, to your network, set the name to it, add your Ethereum address and whatnot, just so that you can configure it. You will need a separate device to be able to kind of connect to
Yeah.
the hardware.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So it's very, very easy for people to get set up, and that will, from me, from just a spectator view, things need to be simple in order to get them off the ground. So that's very good. Are there any advantages or disadvantages from owning and running it through the hardware versus doing it yourself? Is there any difference, or is it just one requires a bit more thought and the other one is simple?
When we start adding other features to the protocol or other standards that our relays will support, we recommend our hardware because then we can help you troubleshoot. All the upgrades will definitely work.
Yeah.
The mechanic that I mentioned with, downloading or flashing new software onto a SD card and then putting it into the hardware for it to upgrade won't be as easy if you're running it on your own. But then you should be technical enough to be able to go to GitHub, download the latest versions, and upgrade your own device if that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
where your skill set is. Yep. We just
The
want to
other
meet
thing with
people
the
where they
hardware.
are. Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The other thing with the hardware is that, of course, the rewards are proportional to your total uptime. So it would probably be a lot more tricky to use an existing device, say a laptop or computer, if you also intend to use that device on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Yeah.
It would either, impinge on the sort of performance you get using it, or would require to have it running. And secondly, a laptop or computer has got a whole host of other processes kind of independent of Tor. So it's more than likely that the running costs for electricity and so on will be a lot higher if you're trying to use your own device if it's not kind of specialized for acting as a Tor relay. So the assumption is our hardware for most people should be quite a lot cheaper on a day-to-day basis as well. And finally, we are just looking, in the interest of adoption, at least initially, to have a slightly higher reward for people running our hardware to kind of, get the immediate number of relays up there.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's extremely simple. It seems from the outset an extremely simple thing to do is, buy a piece of hardware, run it, maintain the uptime, which will, of course, spread out over however many thousands of people, guarantee that there are more relays, thus anonymizing the Tor network or the network better than it is happening right now with Tor. So the natural question from that then is, all right, well, consider that the guys or the girls running the hardware get paid in Tor for incentives. How do you see the token in terms of supply and demand working? Because what is the incentive for someone to buy ATOR? There is definitely an incentive to run a hardware, yeah, because it's, of course, you just use electricity. It's simple. You're doing a good service for privacy, so it's a very, very attractive proposition. Even for me, I don't even do these kinds of things. It seems very attractive, but for someone looking at ATOR and thinking, okay, well, what's in it for me? Why should I buy the token? What would you say to them?
Well, the hardware will be exchanged for tokens, won't be for fiat. So you'd have to use tokens to be able to attain the hardware in the first place.
Okay.
And secondly, we're building or experimenting with services on top of the protocol so that we can use the relays synchronously with the blockchains available to provide the blockchain services through the relays so that it's the publisher and the user of the service is anonymized, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see.
I can explain it a different way if it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to
Okay.
ask for more details on that what you were talking about.
So one of the basic things that we're doing now is our dashboard is we didn't really dive into it, but our beta dashboard is out there. We haven't spoken about it in any AMA, so this is the first time we're speaking about it in any AMA. It's been announced as well on Twitter. So our dashboard is out in beta. If you'd like to try to run a relay and register your relay with the dashboard, you can do that now, and all the steps are available in Discord with video for every single step. And we have help available for you. If you have any questions, we'll literally give you lines of code to put in as we sit there with you. Mm-hmm. So we'll get you up there. But the beta dashboard is permanently published on Arweave. And we're looking to allow other services like this to exist, where you can start publishing on other chains or using other dApps through our protocol, using the ATOR token as the in-between. I hope that gives you a better idea of where we're aiming.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's answered.
Maybe a little more broadly on the kind of use of the token. Of course, in the short term, I think there's a very, very clear kind of demand for it, because the ATOR hardware is exchanged with the token.
Yes.
So that, I mean, with the hardware releasing kind of Q3 of this year, that's where we see the initial high demand kind of coming in.
Right.
But looking to the longer term, especially as we try to make this more decentralized and more independent of our team itself, there are two important sources of kind of importance, I'd say, for the token. The first is what my teammate Slava said on these hidden services. So we see ATOR transitioning almost to a currency of exchange, because, I mean, to put it short, we're building this protocol, we're putting in the hard work of actually sort of validating activity on the Tor network. And so it's kind of the natural next step to actually use that, to actually allow people to interoperate with blockchain and Web3, taking advantage of the validation we provide. And so we can kind of turn ATOR, I suppose, into a currency people can transact with each other and kind of take a fee on that, which kind of brings this ATOR back into the protocol to pay out more rewards. So the hidden services is the first long-term use of the token. And the second thing, even though it may sound a little bit more trivial, is the governance value of the token. So a good number of sort of protocol-specific heuristics, constants, directions of the protocol will be determined by that governance. And as we increasingly see ATOR being a big part of the Onion Relay network, I think the value of this governance will actually be very significant. If we see, other governance tokens, even Arbitrum, it's simply a self-governance for its own network. So the governance for essentially an anonymity protocol in itself, we see that as having quite a high inherent value. So in the long term, that's where the value kind of comes from.
Yeah, beautifully answered. And that was going to be my follow-up question, because I was going to separate the demand as well. So you did that well. And you stated that initially the token use case is very clear because it's used to purchase the hardware. But if I'm correct in just rephrasing what you said in a simple manner, after that, there will be certain utilities for the token that will incentivize users to purchase ATOR to do things on the Tor network that perhaps they wouldn't be able to otherwise. Is that correct? Just in the most simplistic manner.
Yeah,
yes, but summary. It would be, yep.
Yep, that was correct.
Yeah, sorry, did you not hear us? Yes,
yeah,
that was correct. Yeah, it would be for services on top of the ATOR protocol, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. And, let's say now that I want to purchase a piece of hardware, right? Let's say that I'm sold and, wow, this is a great idea. How do I right now go and buy some hardware? Is the hardware ready, or is it still being constructed? What's the status there?
It's still being developed and constructed. We are speaking to a team out in the UK that is going to take this on. We're going through some of the final decision-making steps for our users and alleviating any, I guess, bottlenecks that they might experience with the chipset that we're looking at. So I think we're almost there as far as design and the components. Now it's just putting it all together and making sure that it meets the demand for everything that we're trying to build here.
Okay. And how far would you say, in terms of percentages, you are into finishing, the first purchasable version of a piece of hardware to run these networks?
I'd say like a percentage is hard to say, because then, you kind of have to have an idea of what 100% is, and 100% would be October for us. And I'd say that we're well positioned in our roadmap. Like, we're well ahead of where we thought we would be at this point. So I think that the projections in the roadmap are great starting point. And if you at least look at the roadmap, you won't be disappointed. Like, we'll definitely deliver as the roadmap says, if not sooner.
Okay. And when is the hardware scheduled for release?
We
That'll be
scheduled
October.
it. Yeah, we originally said that it would probably be beginning of next year, but it's looking like October this year.
Okay, all right. So yeah, it's definitely for certain that sometimes it's tough to tell exactly where you are because stuff can pop up that can delay you, and then maybe you're ahead of time. So that's understandable. But October is the and is that the date that you roughly would expect? Is it a prototype? Is it a testable, or would that be the kind of date for something purchasable?
Something purchasable for testing, I would say
Right.
it that way, because we have to move towards a more mass production type of I guess stance. But in the beginning, we'll have to make sure that it works properly, address any questions, make sure that our actual educational materials that we send along with the hardware is making sense and answers any questions. So there'll be a lot of feedback and a lot of I guess Q&A with the community before we can go into full production and full purchase mode. So I'd say October would still be, yes, the hardware should be available, but we'll be testing the hardware with the community as we are now with the dashboard.
Understood. And so for anyone then that is looking, they're looking at your project and they're waiting for the time that hardware releases in full, and they're excited to run a node whenever it does get released, maybe later this year. If they have any trepidation about, okay, well, if I run this, what will my rewards be, and will they dim over time? Is it going to be a good investment for me? What would you say to someone that is trepidatious, having recognized that, of course, it's a great idea? What would you say simply to someone that doesn't have much tech experience, but they do want to delve into this, but they're worried that the investment will take long to pay back, or they're worried that the rewards may dimmer over time? What would you say to that individual?
So I'm kind of interpreting two questions here, which is
Yeah.
the first question is kind of like you're worried that the rewards will kind of disappear out of nowhere or dim more than expected. And
Yeah,
secondly, your question was kind of on the return on investment. So
exactly.
to both of those, we actually it's a good timing that you asked this actually, because a couple of days ago we onboarded Christo from Fintast, and they're a tokenomics expert who have actually worked on a top 10 altcoin most recently. So it's a fantastic addition to our team as technical advisors, and they're helping us design essentially an algorithm, I would say, for the reward payout that's actually flexible to kind of changing conditions and different circumstances over the next 5-10 years and more. And so what that means for the end user is that this algorithm or reward model will be very transparent, so people can see how the base rewards change over time, how the other inputs to the rewards, I'll get to that in a second, actually change. So in terms of something unexpected happening to those returns, that would be highly unlikely. It would have to go through governance, which is again decentralized and so on. So the user is protected in that sense. And on the point of ROI, it's our goal, of course, to make the incentives as sort of appealing as they need to be to grow the Tor network while also keeping it long lasting. So we have a 10% of token allocations, which essentially forms the base of rewards. And this will be kind of some kind of inverse exponential curve where it will initially be slightly higher and then kind of provide a base over many more years.
Makes
But
sense.
this is just one component of the rewards. The hardware sales, which are sold in tokens, we envisage the vast majority of those tokens to actually go back into the protocol to
Right.
reward users. So
Right.
in the initial 6 months to a year, sorry to make this slightly longer answer than it needs to be. In the initial 6 months to a year, we expect the ROI to be really very high, because that's probably when hardware volume will be the highest. We'll have that burst of purchasing, and that hardware rewards will be kind of returned back to the user in a slightly quicker cycle than that base. So it
Right.
means that the rewards are responsive to hardware sales, which we expect to be pretty high at the start. Plus, we have the other sources of governance, hidden services, and so on for the long term to keep the rewards higher than that baseline. but there's also a baseline that never goes below. So they're kind of protected in both cases and can benefit from the upside of hype, I guess, as well.
Okay, that's a great answer, because the challenge that I can see from a spectator aspect is, of course, initially great, but to sustain the whole ATOR protocol, and of course to get people not only buying throughout time, but keeping them running, there would definitely need to be an aspect of strong planning on how to create a sustainable tokenomic industry in order to keep people buying ATOR. Have as you said, you have 10% that would be an inverse curve, which it'll be slightly higher to begin with and then drop off over time, but that's probably based on the value of the token. So that's very, very interesting. And that's something that I'm going to be watching much further. So I'd like to move on from that topic now. We've talked about the sustainability, which is something I wanted to cover. So the next thing are more personal questions about you guys. Yeah. So now that it's very clear, the vision is clear, the value proposition is clear, the reward system is clear as can be for a non-technical person. So the next part is, all right, who are you guys? Yeah. How did the project come together? What inspired the project? So that's 3 questions, but it's a probe on, we just want to know more about you as a team and what inspired you.
So we've been, I guess, friends and colleagues in the space for a long time. This is probably the first project that we've all worked on together. We've worked on different projects in the space together before, but never in this capacity. We all worked on separate projects. Memetic Block, we worked on different projects. You guys can see our GitHubs and see the projects that we've worked on. Always been part of the decentralized and open source space, and wanting to provide the tools for people to make decisions in their lives on their own. Really into personal sovereignty, and I guess digital identity and preservation of, I guess, security and self. And that kind of led down the path of, like, why wasn't Tor continued, and why is it still 6,000 relays, and
Right.
why do people still see this as quote unquote the dark web when it's really the clear web? It's the open web. It's where you can literally use any website you'd like. Yes, some websites block you from getting on them with Tor, but for the most part, you can visit any website. It doesn't necessarily have to be, an onion site or a hidden site. It can be just your regular email that you're sending and receiving. And this led down a path of, like, okay, so why don't people use this? And now the way the world is moving, it seems that anonymity and security is at the front of any issue. And in the digital space, there are things happening that are shrinking our rights every day. And for the most part, the common user isn't experiencing any of it and isn't even knowledgeable of it happening, because it's happening without their knowledge. They're not being told that these restrictions are coming. They're being told that these restrictions are there for their protection, when really they're just limiting their experience of information available. And most users don't realize that the information they're getting is curated by their, geolocation. So with that in mind, we figured that education on the issue is the first issue here, in the first, I guess, hurdle.
Okay,
and then the second hurdle is, once you educate all these people and people realize, okay, you know what, yes, I should protect myself, and maybe I shouldn't just, openly share all of my data with every website I go to. Maybe I should use a VPN through Tor, or use Tor, or whatever you'd like to use. It doesn't necessarily even have to be us. You need the infrastructure to support these people, right? When people finally wake up to this problem, because they are now, there are things happening in the West where people aren't as quiet, and people are vocal about it. And people are becoming a little more privy to this being an actual issue. So now that people are becoming a little more aware, they need a network or a solution to go to that is free. Most users aren't used to paying for access. That's usually the hurdle in blockchain, or any Web3 platform is users don't want to pay. Users are used to Web2 free, everything's free, because they're paying with their personal data, right? And they're not realizing that. So we wanted to see like what's free that people use, that people can use now, run on their own, and we can incentivize by at least paying the relay operators out some reward tokens. Like if you're rewarded and known, like a badge almost, like I support anonymity, I run a relay, I have tokens, here's my badge of honor, just like what we saw happening with NFTs, PFPs, and all that other stuff, where people are really just wearing them to show that they're part of a movement. Doesn't necessarily have to even have a secondary value. We're looking at all sides of this, where it's not just, a show of support. We want you to be able to use this as a utility on the actual protocol. Want you to be able to use this to get the actual hardware, so that we continue growing, right? It should be a mission that feeds itself, and it should grow without really relying on the team behind it. We should be building these tools in a decentralized way as we are, so that it can exist regardless of ATOR being here or not. And that's how we started. Sorry for the long answer, but that's
No,
really the answer.
I was very inspired and impressed actually by the long answer. I was listening intently, primarily because I agree with the view and the vision just on where the world is heading. It's fairly obvious to anyone that has a brain. The sovereignties are being self-sovereignty is being stripped. Our own data is being sold stealthily, and people would simply don't realize. And the timing of it is very good too. So I appreciated that, and that's a strong answer, because it's good to when you speak to team members, to see what's going on inside their heads and whether they really believe philosophically, and as I said before, narrative wise in their projects. So that's good. I can tell that that's all above board. The question then that I want to cycle back to, in fact, was concerning a previous comment you made on education. Yeah, I think you made a comment on it at the beginning of the AMA and just now. You said that the first hurdle is education, and I completely agree. Because it is, these problems are stealthy to the average person, but they won't be in the future. So on that aspect, do you have, I would say, a plan, but do you have a what's it called? Are you providing energy into educating people about the current way things are, and also the Tor protocol?
So what we did was we had a community outreach program, and we're always looking towards new quote unquote programs that we can run, or others are running that we can incentivize. So what we did was we incentivized people to share links or articles on anonymity or infringement on anonymity or security for a couple of weeks in our Discord, to kind of get people thinking about their local municipality, just the digital state of human rights, and sharing different articles or links that they may find, or even writing their own articles or blogs about why this is important. So that gave us a little bit more user understandability, I guess, or just users understanding what it is that we're doing or why this is important. And most recently, it's actually gotten one of our moderators actually to look at their local municipality, which is Canada. I can say that because he's releasing a video about it, where he didn't realize that there were certain Canadian websites blocked for him in Canada that he could view through a VPN or through the Onion routing network, but he couldn't view it through his regular ISP. And it was the bill that is blocking most of the digital websites that he can't access now. So the actual bill he couldn't read, that's ruling his life in Canada from Canada, which is really interesting.
That's quite insane, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
that's a bill that determines law and order. So
yes, and you cannot access it for some reason. Yeah, that was very interesting to me as well. So these are the little things that we think that community sharing, community educating each other, and us just facilitating that space is most important, because we can't do all the work. It really needs to be the users, and our community has been amazing at it. So as long as we facilitate the space and we build the tools, I think our community will continue growing. And as long as we're reactive to the feedback, I don't see an issue with the educational portion either, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's been doing better than we expected.
Yeah, yeah. But the reason why, and that was, thank you for the answer, by the way. The reason I asked that is because it does occur to me from the timing aspect, from our own industry that often has associations with freedom and sovereignty, with, of course, just the general idea. It seems as if you guys are situated in the right place. And the reason why I asked about education is because people are educated outwardly just by being exposed to crypto and the token. But I think from, again, a spectator view, a two-pronged approach would be very interesting. You said you had community outreach that you mentioned. It's very, very rare I've seen in a crypto project that they get their hands dirty down with the people, apart from having outward marketing. I would call that inward marketing, which is going into communities and saying, hey, look, this is what is happening to your internet, or this is what is happening to the protocols that you think are safe. They're not. And those two areas are explosive to me. So I was, just wanting more information about the education. So if we just move on from there now, I think that's sufficient. There's a bridge question that I want to ask. Very simple bridge question before we ask the next one. Will users ever have to pay to use the protocol? So let's say I don't own a hard piece of hardware, but I want to, use Tor anonymously. Will I ever have to pay to access these relays that are incentivized?
No, the user isn't paying for the relay operation. It's the community that's doing it. So
Yeah.
ATOR is rewarding the relays for the users. So we're taking that on. That was one of the issues that the Tor network had in their previous proposals for incentivizing relay operators, because it's been tried before. We're not the first. And the issue there was that the users would be paying as they routed through the relays.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be an issue because then if the user is paying the relay kind of knows who the user is because they got the wallet address.
Yeah.
And then
With
you
a
can
one-way connection.
exactly. So any central source of information about the users is a bad thing. All the relay information is public. All the relay operators are volunteers. None of your actual information is tied to it unless you want to put your information in there. So the relays can be public. We don't see an issue with that. We just don't want to publish any user information, and never do we want to charge users for using the network. If you want to use a service that is being published on the protocol, then that's up to the user and up to the user to trust the developer of that service that we can't control.
No.
But to use the network, obviously it's free. We always want it to be free. We love that it's volunteer based. We love that it's more of an activist movement. And we want to keep it in that vein. So we don't ever envision charging for it. No.
Yeah, on the activist movement comment, that's something that's also interesting because something like this, I think you maybe mentioned this phrase earlier on, but even running a node or a piece of hardware could be considered a badge of honor if something, the problem that you guys are trying to strike at the heart of expands and gets out of control. So that's very, very interesting, and thank you for answering the questions about the users, because as you said earlier on, it's a big problem getting that's the block with, as we say, Web3 and just normal people. They don't want to pay for stuff, right? Whether it's gaming or elsewhere, if people have to set up lengthy things and pay for them in currencies they have no idea about, it's just a problematic thing for adoption. So that's it's good that you have brought that to the Tor network, but also solve the issue of, if people are running nodes directly through, they're paying or doing stuff directly with Tor, then it's not, the privacy is not there, as you said. So that's cool. want to move on
And
from
you don't necessarily, sorry, just wanted to add
oh,
one thing, didn't mean to interrupt
sorry.
you, but you don't necessarily need to be a user of the Tor network to run a relay.
Yeah, yeah.
If you just want to allow other people to stay anonymous, you feel that you're perfectly safe, and you just want to help others that are not, running a relay helps them, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be you running the relay for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
You can tunnel through your own relay, but I mean, the user isn't always the relay operator.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
doesn't need to be the same. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Understood. Understood. Thank you. So the next question is similar to a question I asked before. What are you working on right now? This week. I want to know grassroots. What have you been working on? But more importantly, what are the issues that you guys have found that you've had to overcome or are overcoming as you build the ATOR protocol?
So at the moment, we're really concentrating on getting our users to run the relays that they can on whatever piece of hardware they have. So if you have a laptop, a PC, you can go in Discord and learn about setting up the environment, installing the relay, and configuring it to your needs. On the other side of that, aside from the education, is the actual dashboard. So the validator was worked on, some of the smart contracts and gasless transactions were worked on, and now the dashboard is available for the educational side to kind of meet with the dashboard and start registering to see that both sides are working well together. So the community has been working on teaching relay operation and installation and configuration, network configuration to be able to do that. And then on the team side, we've been feeding the educational portion, obviously, and making sure that the validator works, the smart contracts are gasless, and that the website's actually permanently published. So the dashboard is never going down. It's an actual transaction on the Rweave blockchain, or the Blockweave, I should say. So that dashboard is permanently there. It's there forever. And that's what we're working on currently, is getting those community relays verified and beta testing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And additionally, I have a question here. Will the ATOR protocol improve the speed of the user's experience, compared to what currently happens with the current version of Tor?
Yes, that is the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is to have more relays up, increase the user experience for the incoming users that we foresee.
Okay.
Because the users will come regardless of ATOR.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is already here. We're all seeing it unfold. So it's just a matter of time as we see it.
Okay. And you guys use the phrase proof of uptime, right? So if we're talking about proof of uptime, does the proof of uptime simply just mean the algorithm's way to pay back the hardware, facilitator and the person helping running the ATOR relays with tokens, or is there something else to how proof of uptime works? Could you talk to us more about that if there is something else to the definition?
Well, proof of uptime doesn't necessarily just mean our hardware, right? It's any relay, and uptime meaning how long it's been online, pretty much. That's the simplest definition. So if you've had it up 20 days out of 30, that's obviously less than 25 days out of 30. So if you've had it live for 25 days, you'd probably get a little bit more than if you had it live for 20. If you had it live for, let's say, 10 days out of 30, and it wasn't useful uptime because no one was able to use it because it was maybe online 1 day, offline 2 days, online 1 day, offline 2 days, then you might not receive any rewards because it wasn't useful to the network.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So yeah, it's just as simple as I first thought. And just coming to a close here after those questions, is there anything specific that you would like to tell people about your project that is perhaps misunderstood? If, by the way, things are misunderstood. If not, fair enough. Then perhaps you could just share something you'd like to tell people looking at your project for, let's say, the first or second time?
There seemed to have been a misunderstanding of us being or not being a part of Tor. We are not a part of Tor. We're not affiliated with Tor in any way.
Mhm.
We're using the open source software. We're trying to support the decentralized the nature of the relay operators. And we're here to support the relay operators of the open network. We're talking with Tor to make sure that we stay aligned and make sure that there's no confusion going forward. But this was one of the little, I guess, hiccups that we've hit where people thought that for some reason we were Tor. We are not the Tor project.
Yeah.
And not sure if there's any other questions around that.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense that you guys work in the background on the relays. You don't work with or integrate into Tor. Is that correct?
Well, the Tor project is a foundation. It's a
Yeah.
nonprofit foundation that works with open source code. They kind of, I guess, maintain all of this code. They write it, they do research projects on it, and it's mostly for research and maintaining the open source code. So they're not operators. They're not really operators. They provide us the educational materials and they do a great job with everything else. And we just want to make sure that we continue championing them and showing the great work that they do. We're not a part of Tor. We just want to make sure that Tor survives and it does well. And we shouldn't ever be a centralized kind of effort. It should be a community decentralized effort that's there for the relay operators if and when they need us. And now is the time.
I understood that. And just before I ask a similar question to what I just asked, something's popped up. I've got one more question. Do you guys, you talked about the DAO earlier on, right?
Yeah, there will be governance for the token as
So
well. Yeah.
the governance, how, could you tell us more about how that you'd expect that to work? Would it just be very very simple and commonplace that the amount of tokens you own, has your the weight of your tokens that you own is basically directly proportional to how much of a say you have on the ATOR direction? How would that work? The DAO.
Well, that's also part of the advisement that we're getting from Findas, the new partner that we brought on. So that will be more detailed once we get our tokenomics in order with rewards and as far as the DAO is concerned. But
Yep.
I guess what I can say is that I envision it to be simple and slowly grow into a more complex system as anything else, right?
Yep.
We are people coming together around a vision. And in the beginning, there'll probably be less rigid, a less rigid space than, as we evolve, because we'll see how we want to continue growing together. What are the things that, really matter to the community and grow from there. So I think it'll become a little more complex as we grow, and we'll try to keep it simple in the beginning where it'll be close to what people are used to now so that people can participate. Because the one thing is that if it's too complicated, people won't participate. And if it's something that people don't understand, then they just will shy from it. So we want to make sure that it's something that the whole community can rally around and something that is a tool that everyone can use and understand.
Yeah, completely agree on the simplicity part. There needs to be just minimal barriers to entry in understanding and execution for people to definitely do that. Where I see that excelling though, and usually, well, depending on the project, sometimes I'm a fan of a DAO or a token weighted a model where people can make decisions. Sometimes I'm not, but here that would definitely be attractive. That would definitely be attractive because just of the vision and the idea of having a badge of honor, being able to steer a protocol if it does take off and is running, people are running significant amounts of relays, then yeah, that seems quite lucrative. So
Yeah.
I could definitely see that having some
And
kind of part for the token for sure.
and we won't necessarily have the same tasks at hand at all times for the protocol, correct? Like now the task at hand is the relays, hardware, and the protocol itself. Once this is completed, it will require maintenance, obviously, but now the focus of the protocol will shift. So we want to allow for the DAO to kind of govern that shift. Do we shift more into education? Do we shift more into services? Do we shift more into partnerships with other composable platforms? So this governance portion should allow for us to stay nimble enough in the space to address things quickly and in an agile way and start building in the direction that is needed at the moment, because things move very quickly in this space. So we want to be able to allow our community members to feel like they have decision power and make those choices along with the protocol.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And following on from that, we have just 2 more questions left. And the first of those questions is a curveball question. This question is, in the current world, you know that AI is exploding, and that we envision as a population, anyone that's been looking at AI, for it to take a central stance in our technology, in the way we live our lives, and just in general. So, knowing that's the case, do you see, number one, ATOR or ATOR protocol interacting with AI at any point? And will AI ever, do you think at least, propose difficulties for ATOR?
That is a very interesting question, and I would say that ATOR will sort of indirectly be involved with AI, and more than AI, I would say kind of machine learning and that analysis, because we can now see that your data and privacy is no longer obscured by numbers. We have this idea that if your activities is in the noise of big data, right, of everything else happening. Well, now we're increasingly seeing that using these new tools for analysis, if someone wants to hone down on you and single you out, they are no longer limited by the volume of data. I mean, one example is there is new even open source kind of sites where you can actually, given it one picture of you, it can traverse the entire internet and find all pictures of you, even without your name being associated with it. Just you in the background of the picture and so on. So in that sense, we are kind of defending against this encroachment of our privacy. And that's why we say, to use secure internet anonymity protocols means to truly take back your rights, and it's your right to control what your digital identity is and where you choose to express yourself. And I guess to the growing development and usage of AI and machine learning, all that stuff is very powerful and increasingly so, but it can't defend against the simple mathematics of encryption, I guess. So I guess it's a curve answer to your curve question. There are some things which will never change, even with the onset of AI and ML, and the power of these protocols, I think, will be one of them, and unless the entire world changes as we know and laws of physics change.
That's a great.
But yeah, there could always be avenues to use it for the good as well. We're always a nimble team, as Slava said, so why not?
That's a very interesting answer. That you said there were certain principles and laws that would never change, and you mentioned about encryption there. So that's a great way to finish off that question just before our last question. Thank you for that. And then the last question is basically the same as the previous one. Do you have anything you would like to share before we close this AMA up? Do you have anything to share with the general viewers right now?
This is a good time for the AMA. It's the first one since we've released our first Relay Education series, which you can find on our YouTube channel. So we encourage all of you to register a Relay, register with the Tor network, because this is it's kind of a confluence of times this week. The education series, which is getting people's relays up, is now kind of merging with the backend protocol, because we're using the power of the community to test out our protocol. So this is a really, really exciting time. Moves are being made across all fronts simultaneously, and we would love for you to get involved in our beta testing by registering as a Tor relay. So do check that out for those watching both live and retrospectively. We'd love to have you on board.
Yes, we have 26 verified relays already, and we're looking forward to more.
Okay, great. And, for people that haven't heard of you before and this is the first time they're coming into contact with you, where can they find out more about you?
Check out our website at ator.io, or actually, for the most up-to-date, our Twitter at Ator Protocol. No spaces or underscores. From there, you can find the links to our community. We're on Discord, we're on Telegram, and our community is really amazing. So they would love to take you in, whoever you are, and have you be part of us.
Okay, guys. So you heard that. We've just wrapped up a strong AMA with ATOR protocol, and as they said, if you're someone, or I'll add, if you're someone that prizes and cherishes sovereignty and freedom, then getting involved in what they're building may be something that you would want to look into, especially from a community aspect. So, guys, thank you for being present here in this AMA and giving us your time to explain more about the protocol. We'll definitely be interested to see the developments from here on out, and definitely as October starts to come to a close. I'm wishing you well, and I hope that everything continues to run to schedule.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you. See you later.
See you.